We'll see if we can get everybody turned online. Yep. So, I mean, because we're streaming now.
Okay.
We'll give them a minute. Get exercises in. Start doing some, because you need to,
Get all ready.
in order to talk, you have to make sure that you're
Fully stretched.
that your upper body and lower body is currently doing things. So, yeah, are you ready to chat about small business websites?
I am.
I think this is a great topic today, small business websites.
Yes.
We can discuss the ways that you guys can make your sites better, and how to pick developers and what the difference is between the different types of web people,
Yeah.
which there's a lot.
Yeah, and then go over, do you need a website? That's a really popular question.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot our intro music. Let's
the
because
intro
that's
music
really
going.
important. Hang on a second. There we go. This is what
Because you're pumped up.
gets you into the zone and ready to go. Okay. All right. Well, since we missed it, I'm not going to do the whole dramatic, pull down of the music so that you guys can hear what's going on with that. All right. So let's get this going. Small business websites. We are late. We're about 5 minutes late. So this show will be airing 10 o'clock Eastern on every Monday of the year, as long as we have topics to talk about. And that's 7 a.m. Pacific time.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you guys have ideas for topics that you'd like to chat about, just feel free to reach out to us through either support at Pawfinity or via the email, cs@pawfinity.com, and we'll chat with you there. Or you can leave a message here in the live stream. We can see it coming in. So today we're talking about small business websites. And our first question really is, do you need a website in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, and the clear-cut answer for that is yes. I know a lot of people like to think that Facebook is a good alternate to a website. Facebook is a good addition to a website.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it reaches out to your other audience through social media. But the truth is about 70 to 80% of your new clients are going to find you using Google. And Google gives favor to websites, especially specific websites that are set up in certain ways. There are certain things that are called SEO, and we're not going to get into the technical topics about this, but it's really important that everyone understands that you absolutely do need a website in modern day, and the costs of which we'll talk about in a little while, but they range drastically. I mean, you can get into a website for, the drag and drops are $20 a month, something like that, all the way up to, you could spend $10,000 on a business website if you wanted to, but you don't have to do that. So the business website is a landing page for your business, and you have complete control over that.
Absolutely. And with a business website, you can explain your services in detail. You can talk about your staff on there, promotions, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So your business website allows you to connect with Google AdWords, which is a phenomenal tool for digital marketing, and it's extremely cheap. You can actually get what's called PPC, or pay-per-click. They have different names, CPM and all of the other stuff, but I like to call it pay-per-click marketing. You can pay anywhere from 50 cents up to $5 per click to get a new lead for your business, depending on the environment. And we'll talk more about that in another episode on digital marketing. But for today, it's important to understand that your business website allows you to utilize the Google AdWords system and gain new clients through there at a really low rate.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest differences between having an actual business website and then just like a social media page is you have control over your business website. You have control over the content in it. And it's available to anyone on the internet versus Facebook, where they make you log in just to view.
Right. Well,
pages.
you have to be a Facebook user.
Yeah.
And if you're not a Facebook user, as everybody really should know by now, I'm not a fan of Facebook in particular. Then I'll miss out on certain local opportunities because they're only promoted on Facebook. So you are, and the Facebook actually their
user base is shrinking.
Is shrinking. Yeah, it's absolutely reducing as it goes on, and the younger crowd specifically doesn't use Facebook at all. Now that mom, dad, grandma, and grandpa are on there, the kids don't want it. And I'm sorry to break it to you, but even if your clientele is older in the future, those younger kids will grow up to be your clientele if your business is still running in the future. So you always want to reach out to them as well and get them where they are. So it's a great idea to offer them something directly through the the platforms they're using, such as Google, which they have the lion's share of search results. Most people use Google. On our analytics, I could see that it's something along the lines of 80% of our clientele comes in through Google, which is staggering because you do have other options like DuckDuckGo for a private search, and you have Bing as well, but neither one of them is really doing too much in the search space. So if we were to talk about, how can you boost your business using a website? That's our next topic basically here. And one of the most important things that your local web developer or designer can do for you is create a Google Places or a Google Business Listing account. And those are going to be the search results. We should actually pull one of those up. Let's see if we can get you guys going here. Let's see what we can find.
While he's pulling those up, you might be familiar with it if you search like a plumber in my area, and then you'll see the listings at the top of them on a map. That is the Google Places, the Google listings that we're referring to.
I'm losing your mic on almost every other word.
Okay. There you go. Hopefully that's better. Can you hear me? Yeah.
The question is, can you hear you?
Yeah, I can.
All right. So if she can hear her, then we're back in business.
Okay.
I'm going to switch over here, guys, to a browser. I just pulled up some results for Raleigh Plumber since that was a great idea. And as you can see at the top here, again, this kind of slides out of do you need a website and into marketing and local services. But this is just an example. Without these websites, these companies would not be showing up at the top. As you can see here, it talks about businesses in the first section. And you're going to notice that not a single Facebook page shows up here. Okay, there's one Yelp listing, but all of the rest of these are actual business sites. So this just kind of goes back to our point that you really control your information when you utilize a business website. So the second thing on our list to talk about is you can hire an SEO expert, but make sure that they have a demonstrated history of performance. Ask them to show you something. Show me the results, the actual tangible. Send me an email with a comparison of the results of a company that you've worked with in January versus those results in June. It does take time. I know that there's still firms out there claiming that they can get you straight to the top of Google for, you pay them $10,000 and the next thing you know, you'll be number one in Google, but that just doesn't happen anymore. Yeah. The search engines have gotten a lot more complex. The algorithms, they actually use artificial intelligence now to figure out who's trying to spoof them and who's not. Because back in the day, and I'm going to date myself here, we do some keyword stuffing where basically I would take an entire cloud of keywords, just so Raleigh Plumbers. So Raleigh Plumber, I'll find IRS Plumbers Raleigh, and I'll go in and I'll create a keyword cloud basically of all these tags that the search engines would grab, and then they return my search results. And you can't do that anymore. They actually frown upon that drastically. But
sometimes you'll see it still at the bottom of some older websites.
They still do it.
Yeah, at the bottom it'll be in like a lighter font, and you'll see a whole bunch of just words in there.
Right, and that's what that is. It's old school developers like me that are still doing those kind of techniques. Unfortunately, they don't really do anything anymore, but that's another topic at hand. We can talk about that in something about SEO.
Yeah, but
what works and what doesn't.
To build off of that, when people do claim that they can boost you to the top, which, correct me if I'm wrong, there are some ways to do it, but they're not necessarily the right ways, and they will work for a short amount of time, and then you'll actually get penalized for it.
So that's a scam. I think we should save that for another episode.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's a whole topic in and of itself, but she is right. There is that kind of stuff, and we do have information on that, but we're not going to share that until we get to that episode. You guys are going to have to come back and watch to see what we're talking about there.
Yeah, just ask them, what kind of techniques do they use
Correct.
To boost?
Right. Anytime you hire anyone, make them show you some evidence. They have to prove their worth because, we live in 2022. Anybody with an iPhone and the App Store is now a tech professional. iCloud makes everyone a networking professional. And truth be told, they're not. And there are plenty of phenomenal professionals out there. You just have to sift through all the BS to get through to the ones that actually can perform.
Yeah, and anyone can make claims. So
correct. So you always want to make sure that you follow up on what it is that they're claiming. So, and the last thing to boost your business is pay for a good website. And we're going to talk about that next as far as what does that mean. Yeah. There are tons of examples. I did actually pull up some of our clients' sites, and it looks like I closed the browser window down, so I'll have to pull those back up in a minute. But we'd like to jump into some more juicy content that you guys really can use to either perfect or improve your websites now as they stand right now without going out building a whole nother website, because that's not something you have to do. Depending on your platform, your developer or designer can go in and just make changes. And it makes all the world of difference, really.
Small adjustments, yeah.
Absolutely.
Sometimes just adding a few words of content in there.
Absolutely. And that will improve SEO. And again, we'll talk about that in another episode. I think you guys would find that valuable. And it is something that I personally have a lot of experience with.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next topic is the top 7 places where we see small business sites failing. Hey, wait, hang on. I think I have a thing for that.
Yeah.
I do have a thing for that.
Perfect. No area information. Where are you located? Including something like downtown is great, but in what city?
Right. So we see this a lot when we go through our clients' websites or go through the verification process, which many of you have probably heard complaints about over the internet. But we see that you have a website, but you haven't actually told us where, like what city, state, I mean, what country are you in, And so it isn't until we get to like a pricing page where we see the great, the British pound symbol that we know that it's not even in the United States. So area information. So you mentioned city, state, and service areas. What have you seen before? I mean, I've seen things where they talk about, we service downtown and east of the city, but what city?
Yeah, what city are you referring to?
Okay, and it's extremely important, especially for mobile services,
Yes.
but also for location services, because if your clients are coming to you, they need to know exactly where you are.
Yeah.
Yep. I have a good sample. If you can continue talking about those topics, I'll pull up a good sample here.
Okay, yeah. No information on the employees. So this is a service-based business, and as a lot of you know, the clients, they really love their pets. They want to know who is taking care of their pets. You don't have to put an entire page bio of employees, but it's always a good idea to just include maybe a nice picture and a little bit of content of who they are. You don't have to, like I said, you don't have to put a whole big bio on there, but also include things about yourself. If you're the owner, make sure you put your name on there. Don't just put, the owner, hi, I own Fluffy Cuts. Who are you?
Yeah,
I'm
give a little
Lauren.
explanation and do it from the first person as well. I mean, if this is your business, I do see a lot of times one of the biggest kind of flops that I see in the About Us pages is people writing their About Us in the third person.
Yeah.
So, an example I gave to myself in the notes here, something like Susan, the owner of Fluffy Cuts, was very successful in her previous career. However, she wanted to transition to something she was more passionate about. Now, that's a great comment, a wonderful statement. However, it's very disconnected. Everyone knows that this is just a 1 or 2 person show. That's actually one of the reasons they choose you over a big box store like PetSmart or Petco.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So what you instead want to do is like, hi, my name is Susan, and I have been grooming for 10 years. And before this, my experience was something that I wasn't too passionate about. And by doing that, you can really draw in your clients. Now they know, okay, hey, look, I'm talking to Susan. She wrote this about herself. Yeah. There wasn't a ghostwriter coming in, she didn't pay someone $500 to write up a fancy About Us, and like some of our competitors have done. I'm not dropping any names or anything, but
yeah, and I mean, it's not going to make your business look any less professional. It gives it that small business feel, and it'll actually make people support you more than, if you just make yourself look way bigger than you are and just
because they like the small business.
Yeah, exactly.
They like the small.
They're supporting
reality,
a small business for a reason.
That's it.
So
and I purposely try to avoid the big corporate chains, and I try to go to the one where it's Bob is our electrician, and I'm working with Bob. That's great. Bob's good at his job, and I don't want to pass it off to one of the big national chains.
Absolutely, and I mean, to tie into that, you don't just include things about grooming or boarding. Include
something about yourself.
Fun facts about yourself.
Yeah, I like to knit cat hats when I'm not grooming and stuff. Yeah. So speaking of cat hats, I do have a sample site here for you guys to check out this screen. This is one of our spotlight clients. It's 9 Lives Holistic. Amazing people over there. And I wanted to show you, I believe it's at the bottom of her contact page. She had a wonderful contact page. Let's see here. Whoops. Okay, I found it. Okay, so at the bottom of her site, she has a nice contact page, beautiful pictures, which is always important. She actually converted. You know the story better than I do, actually, but if you want to tell them.
Yeah, I believe it was a 100-year-old building that she converted into a cat boarding and grooming facility.
Yeah, phenomenal, and that's a lot of work, and They've been really fantastic clients for a while now. So at the bottom of her site, on her contact page, you can see here they have a nice little map. It shows Fredonia, New York, and the address area up on the top left. You can see exactly where she is. And she said something somewhere about servicing service areas, Western and Northwestern. So Western New York and Northwestern Pennsylvania. So this is very clear. I know exactly where this particular servicer is. And if I live in South Dakota, I know that this isn't the same 9 Live Solistic that's in my local town. And so I can skip over it. So it's very important, rolling back to the area information topic that we spoke about earlier. It's very important that you give clear instructions as far as where you're located. So the next thing on the list for the top 7 places we see small business sites failing is a poor mobile experience.
Yes.
This is a hard one because
everyone uses their phone.
Everybody
There's
uses
not a
their
lot
phone.
of people that use computers anymore. I mean, we see it in the statistics of people that visit the website.
Right. And you're talking 90% of clientele coming into a website our Pawfinity is it's a service. So our clientele are using it for business. We have a wide range of people using it on actual desktop machines because it's faster and more efficient. Throw that argument out there on YouTube. I'm sure I'm going to get trolled a little bit about that.
Yeah.
But, for the most part, by default, it's faster and more efficient to use a laptop or desktop computer to do business work.
You got the keyboard, the mouse.
You do. But however, on the sales side of things, you're talking anywhere from 80 to 95% of your clientele is going to be using a mobile device. So if your website hasn't been updated in the last probably it depends on how advanced your developer or designer was, but 4 or 5 years, and it's not going to work. It just won't work. I mean, you're going to end up with stuff all over the place, or you have this little tiny screen. How does it go? You have this big page and a little screen, and you have to slide it around to try to see and zoom in and out.
Everything scrunches down and you can't see.
It's so small,
anything.
and then you zoom in on one section of it and read that, and then you have to scroll it across to try to read the things.
Yeah.
So as soon as a client hits that, I guarantee you that they're starting to itch towards that back button to go back to the next result on Google.
Absolutely.
And see someone else's website.
I know I've done it personally. I mean, because I do a lot of my research on my phone. If I'm looking for a new hairdresser or a new nail place,
right.
I'm looking on my phone while I'm just sitting around doing nothing.
Or you're in the bathroom. I mean, let's be honest. Let's be honest. A lot of the research out there, a lot of it comes from that. I mean, you're sitting down, you're not doing anything. I mean, you might as well find you make a dentist appointment.
Or even the bathtub. Yeah, I mean, that's just exactly. So
make an appointment for your dog.
If I go there and the website, I can't pull it up on the phone or I can't navigate it easily on the phone, I usually just hit back and find the next person.
Absolutely. And because it just makes you look dated. And the expectation in our specific industry for a pet pro to have a really advanced modern website is very low. Our clientele, that being the pet owner, they don't generally mind if your website looks a little older, and that's totally fine. If you like that look, just make sure that it's modern underneath. So we can do, I'm really big into cars, and there's a thing called a retro mod where you have an older car body. So like a 73 Chevelle or something. With newer technology underneath. And so they've replaced all the suspension and the engine, the transmission. And they even put modern stereos, but they hide them inside the car. So you can have an older looking website if that's what if that's what floats your boat.
Yeah.
But just make sure that your developer makes it so that it's fancy underneath. And we'll talk more about what that means shortly.
Yeah.
So the next one, this is a great topic, and it's too many animations. Tell me about that.
So it's funny because I love animations. Bill's not a fan of animations.
Absolutely.
I like them with limitations. So when you do animations, make sure your entire page is not animated. You don't want your title flipping in and then the picture floating in and then the content coming in and out and in.
Because these plugins, so what happens from a technical perspective, I mean, that stuff drives me crazy. As soon as I see things flying all over the place, I'm gone. That's the end of that. I don't have time for that stuff because I get to a website and I want something specific and I go there. Some people do, though. I mean, that's a trend in websites is to make them so that the stuff flies around. But if the problem is that you're specifically a web designer, possibly your developer also, they're just using plugins, which is a little chunk of code that they stick onto your website, and it makes it do more stuff without them having to actually do any work. Of course, they charge you for this.
Yeah.
All they've really done is downloaded somebody else's code and stuck it in there, and now you have swooshy stuff happening. So those plugins are very heavy, and what that means is that it slows things down. So they compete against each other for your computer's space, memory space, and it causes these kind of jerky animations at times, and they load more slowly. And now you're starting to get to the point where your attempt to make the experience better by making it flash and swoop and
Yeah.
spin and everything else, all those things you were trying to do now just actually destroyed the user experience, and your visitor no longer wants to participate in your website.
Yeah, so what I would recommend is just a title or a picture throughout the page.
Moderation.
Yeah, exact. That's the word I was
Like
trying
salt.
to think of.
I mean, it's like picture. Okay, picture your
Yes,
Yes, this
absolutely.
is your animations are basically salt. You don't want to just turn the salt shaker over and start dumping it out on your food, because so a little bit of salt is great.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's nice. And most
Yeah.
people will think a little. Even deer like salt.
Exactly. Too
But
much
you start
salt,
dumping it on
and you
there.
don't want it.
I mean, you don't see humans licking on that salt lick thing that the deer they like, or the cows.
The stick,
So yeah. So just
Exactly.
moderation with that. 1 or 2 items, like she said.
And not super important content.
Right.
So like I said, your title or a picture.
Yes.
I like to recommend it about halfway down the page, just to kind of keep them engaged about halfway
Right.
through, so they don't get bored.
Right, because and then that is a great point. It's used to keep them from getting bored, and not as the entire web page. Because I actually was just on a website this morning. Actually, I was somewhere, and their actual content was fading in. So what they were doing was, it was content being flown in from the side and fading in. But I wanted to read it. I was already ready to read this content, and it wasn't loaded. And I started going down, and it got worse and worse and worse as I went down the page. The whole page was blank, and I could see pieces trying to move, but there was nothing there. And so that's what I consider an extreme failure, because I just backed. It's what's called a bounce. When someone visits your website, they see the homepage, they get, I don't know, they get sad, or they get dissuaded, or they get frustrated,
And then just leave.
and then they just bounce back
Yeah.
off and go somewhere else because that wasn't working. So be careful with your animations. Keep them down to a minimum. Think salt. It's just a little bit. It's not
Yeah.
an actual ingredient. That's just seasoning.
Yeah, and I mean, you made a really good point with like the fading in of the content. I'm sure we've all experienced this, where you go to a website and it, like, the animation's really jerky, but I mean, we don't have a lot of time. Yeah, exactly. We don't have a lot of time.
Right.
Neither do our clients.
Well, because you hope you're not on the toilet that long in the bathroom. I mean, if you're in there, if you got a lot of time, you might be able to wait for that, because there isn't too much else to do unless you have a book.
But your client doesn't want to sit there waiting for the content. If they're there, they want to read it. And typically, especially the plugins, they don't start loading that animation until you've hit that spot. So now you're making your client wait for that animation to finish to
Correct.
read important content.
And that should never happen. And so that actually ties directly into, our one of our next topics, which is how to choose a web designer or developer, because
does, yeah.
good ones will know the difference, and you won't have to talk to them about that.
Yeah,
What this conversation is about is to see if you guys, do you have this problem? And if you do, then you need to address it. And if you do have this problem and you chose a developer or a designer, I'm going to recommend that you choose a different one this next time, because they didn't do their job properly. So moving on to the next one, the unsecure websites. Every website today needs to have an SSL certificate. Google mandates this. We're working towards something called HTTPS everywhere, which just really means that they want every website on the internet to be secured with an SSL certificate. These are cheap. A lot of these hosting places are handing them out for free when you buy a domain through them.
Yeah, like Wix, Squarespace, I believe both of those offer SSL certificates right in their packages.
Right, and so it's something that's free. If you do have to buy it, they do get a little pricey sometimes, but you don't need. I believe it was Namecheap. They offer it's something like 15 different SSL certificates, but you actually, the fancy ones really nobody needs anymore. They're actually phasing out. I don't know if you knew this or not, but those extended validation certificates are being phased out. So going with a baseline SSL certificate is completely fine. It's just an encryption key, more or less, and it'll make your communications between your website, and your client nice and secure. And also, if you're submitting data through a form and it's unsecured, you've just opened yourself up to all kinds of nasty, which let's do an episode on security. I think that'd be a good topic to talk about.
Absolutely.
That's one of those things. Security is one of those things that'll make you kind of stay up at night once you actually know what you're looking at there.
Well, to jump on that really quick, and you might be thinking, oh, it's just my clients putting in their phone number and, contact me. I'm interested.
Well,
in
but that's their phone number.
But that's their phone number.
Right.
Or
That's
their
private
email
information.
address.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you have, I don't want to be too harsh with my words. You have unsavory internet workers that
they scrape the website.
they scrape
for stuff
websites.
Like that.
It's a very simple exploit. There's more advanced ones, but it's to summarize. And again, I'm probably going to get trolled about this, but we're not talking about technical details here. If anyone's watching, this is just a summary for non-technical individuals to explain the topics. But at any rate, there's something called a man in the middle, exploit. And what you can just picture is an interception on a football field. Somebody's coming in, you're throwing a ball to your teammate, and someone comes in, jumps it. They look at the ball, say, okay, hey, this is what it's a Wilson or whatever. No plugs here.
And then throw it back.
And then they throw it to the person that it was supposed to go to, and nobody knows any difference because this guy was really quick and he was really invisible. When you encrypt it, that guy that's running down the field to try to jump into the middle of the throw, he can't see the ball. He doesn't, even if he caught the ball somehow, he can't read it. He rolls it over. It's all brown. There's no letters on it at all, or the letters are scrambled up in a way that there's no way for him to read it. And so that's why you need an SSL certificate, even on basic forms, especially. I didn't even think of this. Any of our pet pros out there that are using manual forms, like as a booking request, you're collecting all sorts of information. So as far as legality goes, in certain countries that are more tight about their privacy, like the EU countries and Canada even is much more private than the United States. But when you're actually likely violating local legislation by not having a secure form. I don't remember what year it was, but somewhere in the next 2 or 3 years, I believe unsecured websites won't be visible through certain browsers, okay. Chrome specifically. It was supposed to be this year, actually 22, I believe it was supposed to happen.
Okay.
They didn't implement probably because there's so many websites that are unsecure. But let's keep it moving. So slow sites.
Yeah. So slow sites.
Slow sites. How slow is your website?
Yeah.
And this is like one of those things.
If you're waiting for a while for the things to pop up, it's too slow.
And a while is going to be like a second. And if you picture that, 1001, if your website hasn't started to render usable content by then, that your designer has failed.
Yeah, and you're gonna lose your client. I mean, because they, like I said earlier, they don't have a lot of time. They don't want to sit there and wait for things to load. They just want to see what they want to see at that time.
Absolutely. So make sure that you get on your designer and developer and say, hey, look, why is my website, like I took out my watch and it was like 5 seconds before this thing loaded up. And the reason is heavy assets and all of this other stuff. We can get into more technical stuff later when we talk about that specifically, but they can fix that. If they say, oh, no, that's just the way it is, but don't worry, everybody's internet is fast. I'm going to tell you that I've driven straight through Raleigh City. We have 4G LTE, we have 5G here, on an iPhone, on Verizon, top of the heap, right? Performance-wise, there are certain times where I'm fishing around in the air for a signal still, and so I try to load a basic website, and it's not coming up. And so I do my test. I go back to Pawfinity and load that, and that comes up. And so I know that it's because the site is too heavy, not because I don't really have any internet. So it's trying to pull the site down, and it can't get it because the assets are so big and they're all getting in the way.
And I mean, if you have your own website and you're running into this problem, there are very simple fixes to it. I mean, you could break it up.
Not yet.
Okay, never mind.
Different topic.
Okay.
We're going to save that little tidbit.
Okay.
So just make sure that your website isn't slow. If it is, get on your developer or designer. If you're doing this yourself, I don't necessarily want you guys to reach out to us about this, but that's why you pay people. But I mean, if you're a current client of Pawfinity and you have an active account, feel free without any question to send us something through support. We'll help you with some ideas on how to get that sped back up. Yeah. For everyone else, I mean, you should be a client of Pawfinity if you're not, if you're in the pet service industry. So come on board and we'll help you out after that. All right, your last topic there.
Call to action. Missing your call to action. So what is a call to action? It tells your client what to do. You visit my website, schedule an appointment. Come see me, call me, text me. And you don't have to.
I got it.
Okay. You don't have to necessarily say you don't have online booking on your website. You can still have a book now button and then have it direct to your contact page. So it tells your client what to do. And it's a good idea to have a call to action towards the top of your website, but also towards the bottom as well. And then just sprinkled throughout the middle. I mean,
that's right.
In your services.
Well, yeah, because you want to integrate it into the content. It shouldn't be. So the idea is the client sees it as this big, buy stuff button. That's what the idea should be. But now your designer, your developer has to find a way to kind of get that in line with the content and make it more streamlined. But the point of the top and the bottom is as soon as they get to your site, they might know who you are and they just want whatever it is that you're selling them. So they get to the website, they go to the top, they hit, the buy stuff button is what I'm going to call it, right? Or call me button.
Yeah.
But especially on mobile, they've scrolled and scrolled and scrolled all the way to the bottom of your endless page here.
They're
They
interested in your
they don't
services.
want to have to scroll all the way back to the top.
Exactly.
So make
So
sure you
have it
guys
right
have a
there.
call to action button. Yeah, absolutely. Top and bottom.
Yeah. And I mean, you can put it like if you're talking about your services,
Okay.
you can put it in the content of that. It doesn't have to be an actual button. It could also be a link in the content.
Absolutely. And so we are running a bit long. We went long in the tooth on that one,
Oh,
on that little section. But that
yeah.
was the top 7 places we see small business websites failing. If you go through that list and you work through each one of those topics objectively, be honest with yourself. If you're not, making the grade on those, fix it. I mean, this is just digital technology. If your web developer or designer can't get that fixed for you, then again, hire another one because they're a dime a dozen these days.
Yeah.
But that leads us to the next topic, which is what do you need, a web designer, graphic designer, or web developer? And I'm going to explain the differences of those quickly to you. I have some notes here so I don't forget what I'm talking about. But so web designers work mostly with the front end technologies. They make like HTML websites, and sometimes they do some of the animation stuff, and they'll make it look nice and pretty, and they're a fantastic tool. Most of small businesses, most small businesses that are like privately owned, smaller, are going to use a web designer. That's going to be the person that you go to. So that distinction is very important. Graphic designers, those are going to be your digital artists. They're extremely creative and they make all sorts of beautiful illustrations. They can make beautiful buttons. And the ones that are more well vetted with education actually learn about UI design, which is the interface that the people use. That's, where do your eyes travel when you're looking at the website? Web designers do that as well. I mean, that's part of their job. But the graphic designers, it's kind of outside their scope.
Like specialty.
It's a specialty.
Yeah.
If you're an advanced graphic designer, you're an artist, and you can make all sorts of ads and really neat and beautiful sites that you hand off to a web designer usually, or a web developer.
They do, this is a little outside my scope, but they do like logos and branding as
Yeah,
well,
they can
right?
do logos and branding, but I mean that's on them. Everyone has their specialty, and each graphic designer has their own style. So you have to find the one that matches you. It's not just necessarily whether
Yes.
are they good or are they bad. Well, that's completely subjective because something that you might like, I might not.
Absolutely.
And so you find the graphic designer that fits your needs for the specific things that you're trying to do.
Which we've found. There has been like websites and apps that I love, and he's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's not really my forte.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody has their own style. And
Yeah.
then, but that leads us to the last one, the web developer. And you hear this word passed around. I'm a developer. I'm an app developer. I mean, web developer, app developer these days, those roles, again, I'm going to get trolled for this, but it doesn't really matter. Those two fields do overlap. I mean, the technologies are slightly different, but once you get into the web developer, you're a programmer. I mean, that's the ugly word that no one uses anymore. Computer programmer. You expect big spectacles. That's and like pocket protectors and stuff. But that's old thinking. That's just not the way
Yeah.
it goes.
Absolutely.
You just have to have a mind for it. But web developers are generally going to have extensive knowledge in web design and interface. Along with extensive knowledge, I'm just going to read this to you guys because it comes out better than when I'm saying it. Extensive knowledge of various programming languages, both front and back end. So they're going to be responsible for creating an entire web system. It's going to be they can deploy an entire either website or more advanced, e-commerce systems or programs across an entire thing. The further you go into it, it becomes a full stack developer. Again, these are things that you guys don't need necessarily unless you're creating like an e-commerce solution.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you're going to have your web designer. They're going to be the person that can get the website built, get it launched out there. You're going to have your graphic designer that could assist either the web developer or the web designer and get all of your graphics, all of your marketing kind of unified and create a nice brand, beautiful imagery. If you can afford to involve them, that's good. And then the web developer is going to be kind of like the Swiss Army knife. They're going to know multiple programming languages. They're going to know front and back end development, which is to create more advanced systems. They're going to be able to either extend things like WordPress or Joomla, or they're going to be able to create from scratch something for you as a full custom website, that's an exciting thing for anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, because you can literally, as a client, as a business owner, you can come up with anything you want.
Yep.
And they can make it.
Make it. Yeah.
So let's see if I forgot anything there. And yeah, one of the little, I guess, more distinction points, because people are just I'm a developer, they're just throwing it around these days. If they're if they're deploying templates on WordPress and they're just doing like auto launch for WordPress hosting and stuff like that, if you're buying a template system, you're working with a web designer, not a developer. So their pay rate should be reflective of what they're actually doing. And the pay scale is very different between those two roles.
Yeah, and if they're using the drag and drop kind of websites like your Wix, your
Right.
Squarespace, and things like that, that is a web designer, not a developer.
And the reason we keep trying to make this distinction is so that you guys know who you're dealing with and how much you should really be paying for that.
Absolutely.
I
Yep.
mean, because your dollar per hour on a web developer is very much more than a web designer. Again, people will argue this fact, whether they should get paid the same or not, but there is no fact. I mean, you have a web developer knows four or more languages in programming.
Yeah, who's making everything from scratch.
And you have a designer, and there's nothing wrong with web designers. I don't want to offend anyone out there. It's a phenomenal job, and it's extremely important. You guys can get a lot of work done. However, if you are, I'm sure somebody's out there salty right now,
I've
talking
done
about
web design.
talking about how I know 3 languages, and
Yeah.
I consider myself. That's fine. You can consider yourself a developer. Keep your
Yeah.
education going. Learn the full stack. Learn
Absolutely.
how to work with Linux. Learn how to launch AWS instances and become that developer. Get bigger and continue. And that's what the whole thing is. It's kind of like a scale.
Yeah,
But-
and it's not.
We'll move on to the next topic. So what's the best platform for a small business website? And it really depends on what you're offering. You have different things such as WordPress, which is a phenomenal system. That's kind of like a jack of all trade web system.
Yeah.
And Squarespace, which is a drag and drop editor, but they've taken it to a whole next level. In my opinion, I think that's the best drag and drop editor as far as capabilities and the end product goes. And then you have things like Shopify, which is more like an e-commerce. And with these platforms, with all 3 of those platforms, you can find people that are specialized in them. And I recommend, working with those pros.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're never going to get through this list unless we get this moving. So,
Yes. And it doesn't have to necessarily be from the company itself. I know, like Wix, for instance, they have their like Wix experts. That's just someone that pays Wix to get that certification.
again, that goes back to what we said in the beginning.
Yeah, make sure
vet
you follow
them.
up with them. Yeah,
What have you done? Show me your work, and let me have a look at it. Does it meet,
yeah,
the criteria?
absolutely. I mean, I've built a few Wix websites for people, and then they asked me if I wanted to be a Wix expert, and the only difference was that I had to pay them to get that certification, and I didn't learn anything extra. I just paid them. So just follow up on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so talking about that, so we're going to jump to the topic about how much should I pay for a website. Oh, we're running at like
Yeah, I
35
know.
minutes here.
Oh
so
my goodness. Okay. This is
so-
a very interesting topic.
yeah, how should I pay for a website? Because that's what you're speaking of. I'm going to read our notes if you want to.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the prices vary. They're drastic. You can pay anywhere from a few $100s to a few $1,000s, and it just depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a
Correct.
completely custom built website,
Well, let's start at the drag and drop. So you have
yeah.
Wix, GoDaddy. I got a little list here, guys. I'm not trying to pretend like I'm not reading. I have a paper with my notes on it that I wrote before this
that's to
started
help
up.
keep us
So
organized.
Wix, GoDaddy, Weebly, and other what I call website and minute systems. You basically have a drag and drop editor. They claim through their marketing that anyone can do this, but I guarantee you, once you start, and this is me included, this is one of those things where the computer is going to get like a nice chop straight down the middle when you start using them. But yeah, they say you can just drag all these things, and all of a sudden you have this beautiful website, and the commercials shows people sitting in couches on their laptop, just scrolling little things around, and all of a sudden it doesn't work like that. So there is absolutely a condition where you would want to hire someone that's either a pro, like she said, on with Wix or GoDaddy or whoever you're using. And they don't need to necessarily be a web developer or a web designer or graphic designer. They just need to know how to use that system.
Yeah.
Those aspects. We have a comment saying, yeah, I mean, I've been there. It's miserable. I can't personally, I can't use Wix, and no offense to Wix at all, but my background doesn't allow me to kind of just drag things around it. We write code from scratch and here in Pawfinity, and it's very freeing because you get to do kind of anything you want. It just does take longer, but the end result becomes exactly what you want. So we have Wix, GoDaddy, those technologies. The pricing of those is going to be much lower.
Yes. Yeah.
So even if you hire a web developer who's the most expensive type of tech person,
Yeah.
you're still going to pay them the same price pretty much as you would anybody else that's doing something else, because their expertise doesn't actually align. Maybe that's one of the reasons I don't align with Wix.
With like Wix and stuff, because
Yeah.
it's very static. So for people that actually like code, they don't want to use that
Right.
because it's very limiting.
So their experience doesn't give them any benefit there. But when you have a graphic designer, that actually, in my opinion, that might
Would
end
be
up
the
being
best
the best
platform.
person, because they're very visual. So I mean, if you're building one of those Wix or Weebly sites, it might be in your best interest to contact a a graphic designer, definitely a web designer. That's absolutely their role, to build something for you and make it look, beautiful, have a great UI. Next up, you'd have something like WordPress, Squarespace, or Joomla, which probably no one's. I don't think anyone's talking about Joomla anymore. I think
No,
maybe
I feel
that's
like that's
gotten.
a little
Is
outdated.
that
Yeah.
well?
It's falling
Yeah.
behind the time.
Well, I'm not going to talk about things that are too old for people to understand anymore on
Yeah.
the web. But I've been doing
WordPress.
this a long time. There's been a lot of technologies that come and go. So WordPress is a phenomenal platform. Performance-wise, it's not super great. It is a slower system. However, a well-vetted web designer or web developer will know how to make it faster. There are ways you can do that.
Absolutely.
It can be built anywhere from using a template. Now, don't be fooled. This is one of those little insider tips. Your designer or developer or just local nerd or something that you're hiring. We get a lot of sons and daughters of people that own shops that are doing websites and stuff. They can go out and buy a template, which is basically like the layout of the entire site for I think it's $120.
Or you
Okay.
can just pay like $20 a month
Right.
and then get access to a whole bunch of
Yeah, and so you can have all these templates. So they're using a $100 template. If they're charging you $5,000 for this website, you've been overcharged.
Yes.
Now, conversely, on the other end of it, you can go to a web developer that's proficient in WordPress who can actually do a custom theme, do
Make
custom
you-
designs,
custom like
and
template.
and that can absolutely cost $5,000 to $10,000 because the extent of the work that can be done. So WordPress is extremely flexible. People say, how much should a WordPress site cost? Well, that depends on what you're getting, and how much it's doing. I mean, you can take a WordPress all the way from a standard blog with just a few posts and a basic template, all the way up to a full-out e-commerce site that's running with a shopping cart and SSL and credit card processing and all that.
I would say it should cost a little bit more than your Wix, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you know way
Well,
more
I
than
mean-
I do. A little bit more than your Wix and your GoDaddies, but less than a completely custom-built website.
That depends on whether or not your WordPress is custom built.
Because WordPress can be
Because
completely custom.
I've
yes.
custom built a WordPress site, and
That's
it
very
is a
true.
bear. I can
Yep.
tell you that much.
I
Because
retract that statement.
well, I mean, but that's the thing. It all depends on what you're getting, and it also depends on who's doing it. Like if you have a student, you could have a brilliant student. Again, all these comments that I make, they're very general, and it's intended to try to answer questions for the whole audience. But you could have a brilliant student, but it's still a student. He or she is, or they is, learning this stuff, and their dollar per hour should be considerably less than someone that's been doing it for 10 years and's created like 100 different WordPress custom sites.
Absolutely.
And has all that experience. So the experience of the person that's doing the work, the extent of the work that's being done, and how they're doing it. Are they using templates and WordPress themes, or are they trying to write this from scratch? Because you can. WordPress can be built very similar to a completely custom website.
And I'll see people that try to repackage like Wix websites and say that they custom built them, and no.
Right. Well, right. I mean, they don't,
doesn't work that
but
way.
that's again, it goes back to proving the point. Are you doing it? So the last on the list is a full custom website, and let's see here. What are we talking about on that? Yeah, as long as you're working with a competent developer, a full custom site can cost you anywhere from $1,500 to $10,000, $20,000. I mean, it literally goes. There is no end. It depends on what they're building, and that's going to be much more expensive usually because the dollar per hour goes up, and the developer is going to have to be much more high end. They're going to have to know these languages, like we spoke about, in order to build the site. I mean, you could use a dynamic site, which has all sorts of cool stuff, like you said, floating around and responsive. So it goes onto a mobile device and it changes all of its layout and it becomes mobile friendly.
Well, that's actually a really good point. So a lot of the WordPress templates and things, those are responsive, which means if you switch from a computer to a phone, it'll shrink itself down. Move to a tablet, it'll shrink or it'll expand to meet that.
Correct. Yeah.
But Wix and GoDaddy, things like that, those are not responsive. And I know you can make a website to fit on a phone, and then you can make a website to fit on a computer. But it doesn't actually scale out to whatever device it is.
So what she's trying to say is that devices come in all different sizes these days. Even,
Yes.
for instance, even the iPhone now
Yeah, the
has
small one or a
multiple
huge
different
one.
sizes. And
Yeah.
so you want your developer designer to be making it to fit all sizes. And there's a difference. Take notes here. There's a difference between steps being responsive for mobile design and then fluid mobile design. Fluid mobile design means that it will adapt itself to any resolution screen. And I'm talking everything from like a little, the smallest of, I don't know what the smallest phone is, but let's just say the tiniest phone all the way out to a full 1080p monitor on a computer or larger. And if there's any point in between there where it breaks, then it's not fluid, it's steps. So what you'll notice is if you shrink your own website down, I guess I can give an example. Let's give an example.
Yeah, and I mean, while he's looking up that, recently, just a few weeks ago, I actually had someone who had their website completely redesigned, and then I pulled it up on the phone, and her Book Now button was halfway hidden underneath another object, but it worked perfectly fine on a computer. And that's the whole thing about responsiveness. If it was responsive, it wouldn't be hidden.
Correct.
But it wasn't responsive.
And that's the difference. And so those steps, like, that you need to make sure. I mean, I'm not going to give anybody leeway on this, and anybody on YouTube that has a problem with that, you guys can comment. But if you're in 2022 and you're getting paid to build a website,
it needs to be responsive.
It has to be fluid responsive. No more of this step nonsense. I don't know what you guys are doing out there, but because people are paying these developers to do that. So fluid responsive looks more like this. As it comes down, the entire website will change and modify itself until it fits perfectly to the devices that you're on, as long as you guys can see all that. And so this is still, this is our mobile site, but it will adapt to tablets, and not just specific tablets, which is what that step responsive is. Any tablet, any size, any browser, anywhere. And that just gives you a higher quality. And that's something that you're going to get out of a custom site, but you might not get out of any of the others. Because you can't. I mean, some of those templates that you buy, this WordPress themes, they're steps, and they look like steps. You can see it. You squeeze your browser down, and it goes. Squeeze it again, it goes. And then you go right in between where the steps are, and the things just go. Yeah. I don't have an explosion thing over here. I don't think. No, that's magic. That's not the right way.
And I know, like Wix, Wix for certain, their websites are not responsive. It's basically two different websites, one for a computer, one for a phone. And if you use Wix, when you're building it, you have those like dotted lines on the side. You want to keep everything within those dotted lines.
Different topic, different conversation.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, okay. We're not talking about that today.
And so that's the big, and they'll say they're mobile friendly, but mobile friendly is different than responsive.
Absolutely. And so we're gonna wrap this up now, guys, because we've been on here for a long time. I think YouTube cuts us off at an hour.
Oh, wow.
So the last little thing that we wanted to mention is, when should you build your own website versus paying a developer? And that really just depends on what it is that you need. If you can afford to pay a professional, by all means, pay one. It's going to make your life so much easier. The process will be better, and you won't karate chop.
Computer.
Because the computers are expensive. So think about it this way: $1,000 laptop chopped in half, or $1,000 website. I mean, you got to buy a new laptop anyway. Now, I mean, you might be talking about $2,000. I don't know, because you chopped $1,000 one, and then you have to buy another $1,000 one. So I mean, now you just wasted $2,000. So you might as well pay the web developer their money. But before you do that, make sure that they know what they're doing. I mean, vet them. There was a section in here that we skipped over for time. Talking about reviews and all of that. And honestly, reviews have very little value if we're because now we're doing a B2B conversation, business to business here, guys. Like the client should be out of this conversation, and business to business, the reviews don't really mean anything. You have negative reviews coming in off emotional people that had a conflict with your business, and they start hacking the keys with the pointy fingers. And then you have positive reviews coming in from your supportive clients that just want to, they want to help you grow. They want to help you do well. And both of those are, they're both a little bit manipulative in their effect on people, and neither one of them is too valued. In all reality, the negative review could have a lot of information that's useless. The positive review could have a lot of information that's fluffed up to make you sound better. So how do you do it? You cut through the reviews, forget about them. Just don't even bother. Look over the portfolio of work. Yes.
Yeah. Let me see some live websites that you've done. Pull it up, see how fast it is. Portfolios are great, but also ask to see live websites.
Right.
I mean, is it taking 5 seconds to load?
Yeah. Yeah. So is it responsive? Do they have animations going all over the place? Go back in the video and have a look at those things that we were talking about. Is it secured? Are they producing websites that are not secured? Do their contact pages not make any sense? Like where is this company located? So go back through the list of things that we talked about and work that in. And when you personally review this stuff, like Facebook suggestions are there's some of the worst information you're ever going to get is coming through a Facebook suggestion, which we'll talk about in another video, talking about authenticity and I mean, there's
That
so
will be
much
a fun
fakes.
episode. Yeah.
Like, I can't even imagine what that's going to look like in a few years. Because I saw some pictures of faked people, like deep fakes or something they call this, where they actually make someone's face and like put it on something
Oh,
else and stuff like
really?
that. Yeah, it was in the news or something
Oh,
something to do with the
wow. Yeah.
Disney
It's,
characters or something they were talking about. If they were in real life, this is what they'd look like. You can't even believe it. It actually looks like real people. So in the future, those deep fakes are going to get. Yeah, I mean, you're going to end up with such bad information coming in off bots and other nonsense.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
the point of what I'm saying is, do your own research. Do get your information. Review sites, podcasts like this, and review. Did we get killed? Review. More information about different things like SEO and website design and development, and then ask us if you're our clients. Shoot us a question. Hey,
Oh,
man.
yeah. We'll help you
You
out.
know.
Yeah.
You know. Bill. I have a guy trying to charge me $1,500 for a Wix website. Should I do that? No.
We have helped clients before when they tell us what their website, they're calling themselves website developers, and what they were doing, how much they were charging. We're like, oh, no,
Right.
you don't want to do that. And
No.
then, I mean, one lady was getting an Unsecure website built for herself, and she was spending so much money on it. And you don't want to do that.
And here's the case in point is
And-
it's really difficult to get through the BS. I keep talking about BS on these things. Maybe we should change the name to I don't
Cutting
know.
through.
But it's hard because
Yeah.
it seems to be, I don't know if it's every industry. I don't know if it's everywhere. I don't. I know what I know, and this industry is what I know. And it seems like tech people like to try to overwhelm their clients with all of this jargon and all of this, I know so much stuff. But
Yes.
when you cut down below that, there's really not much proof there,
That's funny because that's exactly where I was going.
Yeah.
Is that we as the buyer, we're not supposed to know a whole bunch of stuff. So if you have
You're
someone
trusting.
throwing a bunch of information, okay, obviously you know what you're doing. I'm going to hire you, but that's not always
Right,
the
because
case.
a lot of times, I'm giving you guys insider information here. A lot of times, those people read a blog post or watched a YouTube video, grabbed a computer, and started selling websites. I'm telling you now, there's actually a software, and I'm gonna cut it here so we can wrap up. If you guys have any questions, just submit them through the comments. We'll get them here on our end.
Oh, who was learning
But
as they were coding?
this guy is
Yes,
learning how to code.
as he was building a software for professionals.
And he's selling the software to you guys, not to you guys, because you guys, you're too educated for that. But he's selling the software to on the marketplace.
While
He's
he's learning how to
never done
code.
this before.
And
So-
there's nothing wrong with learning while you're going, but expanding your knowledge, not learning the basics of it.
And you build it, and then you vet it and you test it and you
Yes.
see if you know what you're doing and you look for mistakes.
Yes.
I've been doing this a long time. Like I built a website. I think my first experience with web technology was in '99. Whoa. You know what I mean? So like I've been doing this a long time, and as a web developer it's been like 15 years or some craziness like that. So I have a lot of history behind me
Way
as far
longer
as
than
seeing
that.
things. And you'd be surprised, guys. You'd be surprised what's going on out there. So just to wrap this up, this was our episode on small business websites brought to you by Pawfinity. I'm Bill, and this is Lauren, and we are going to sign out.
Well, let me
But,
just add this
no.
one last thing in there that
You better
you
hurry
didn't-
because they're going to cut us off.
When he was saying when should you buy a website, so if you're new and you don't have too much money to go have someone to build you a website, you can build one. But later on in the future, definitely put money aside and have someone help out. Whether it's with SEO, you don't have to rebuild it all from scratch, but just have them reevaluate it and see how you can improve in the search engines and how your website can just be better.
Yes, absolutely. You can definitely improve your site. Well, there's some caveats there. You can only get so good on the Wix or
Yeah.
GoDaddy or Weebly's.
But
You
if
can
you-
get very good on the WordPresses and the Squarespaces and stuff like
Yes,
that.
yeah.
And the custom sites, the sky's the limit. I mean, you can literally do anything. So.
But yeah, if
But
you're
they can
making it
improve.
from your own from scratch at the beginning because you don't have enough to pay someone, which is totally fine. I mean, I've
Absolutely.
been there.
They can be changed.
Yeah, just know that you can go in the future and evaluate it. It is a very important part of your business, so it should be something that you put money aside and
Absolutely.
put money towards.
Yeah, it's a critical tool. I mean, without your website, honestly, you kind of start dissipating. Pawfinity clients, you guys get the ability to have your company pages, which are SEO'd and fully responsive,
Yes.
and HTML5 and all the other little juicy
Fun
bits
stuff, yeah.
that go unnoticed. But we're gonna get going, guys, because
Yes.
this is about the end of our time. It's supposed to be a 30-minute podcast, and it ran for almost an hour. So we just very passionate about web stuff. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Hit us on the comments or reach out through support if you have a question on your particular website. We'll take a look for you. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's not this is not part of our service, but given this podcast and the topic, we're we're going to do that for you. So
Well, we help our clients out.
yeah,
I
let's
guess, so.
move it back so they can see us. Let's get a little music going. And all right,
Thanks
guys,
for joining us.
everybody have a good day. Get back to work. I'm sure there's dogs and clients out there looking for you, just like they're looking for us. Hopefully they're nice. All right, have a great day, guys.